an assembly of sinners saved by the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's who we are.
I like to describe Ed as a 320-pound, 8-year-old boy who wanted desperately to feel worthy and to feel loved. But not much in his life had taught him that that was possible. About a year after we were married, his business started to falter, and he went back to relying on the things that he had relied on before from the world. And it got to a point where I knew that I needed to step back and let the Lord work on him. There was a church across the street from us, and we had watched Passion of the Christ the night before, and I asked him, I said, will you come to church with me for the whole church service? He usually came in during the message. By the second song, I looked over to him and he was in tears. And I looked at him, I said, are you all right? And he goes, it's just really hitting me hard today. And I believe for the first time, he truly opened up his heart to Jesus that day. And when the sermon was over, the pastor said, if anybody wants to be baptized, you know, we can make that happen today. And I felt a little squeeze on my hand, and I had my head down, I was praying, and I opened up my eyes, and he was peeling off his shoes and socks with his feet. His baptism was the most heartfelt, most joyous, after months and months of prayer for him. I saw him be truly that buoyant little 8-year-old boy who just wanted to be loved, and for the first time in his life allowed himself to feel the love of God. After Ed's baptism, things were awesome for a couple of months, and I naively thought that all our problems were solved. When he started descending back into the worldly ways that he had been rescued from, I knew that it was a spiritual battle. On May 20th, 2018, he and I got into the car to drive to Calvary Chapel, Las Vegas for the 9 o'clock service. But when we got into church, he sat down instead of standing up to worship. And only seconds later, he slumped over and he fell into my lap. And it's all a blur after that. The next thing I remember is I was in the foyer and this woman had her arms around me, and I couldn't let her go. I didn't know who she was, and yet she sat there with me and prayed with me and talked to me as the worship service was converted into a prayer service. God took him when he was surrounded by believers who were praying for him. In the middle of a worship setting, just called him up to heaven, and I believe that he was clothed in Jesus' righteousness and his sins were forgiven, and that for the first time ever, the prayer that I had prayed for him to be happy, whole, and healthy was realized. I got into the ambulance, and by the time I was there, she was there. And we were sitting in the waiting room waiting for them to tell me what I already knew. And I looked over at her and I said, you know, I have a job interview tomorrow here. And she said, for what position? And I said, for the communications director. And she said, that would be with my husband. And I looked at her and she looked at me and we were like, okay, that's odd. After they told me that Ed was gone, I went in and I gave him kisses and hugs, and it was really hard for me to leave him. And the woman who had been holding me this whole time was there still, and her husband was there, Pastor Tim. So it was Kathy and Pastor Tim had also brought Nikki Monto. They were there surrounding me as my new church family, and they ministered to me, they listened to me cry, they gave me hugs, they prayed with me, and they made me feel like I wasn't alone. And it was amazing. And it's just a testament to me that God does know what he's doing all the time that even though it was tragic, and even though it was difficult, and even though it was probably the worst day of my life, it was also amazing and beautiful.